Yesterday we learned about the different kinds of objects and the types of consciousness that take the different kinds of objects. So we learned that there are 6 kinds of objects, and also there are objects called Kama Vachara objects, Mahagata objects, and so on. Now today we will relate the doors, the classification of doors with the objects today. So if you look at the chart for Dwara Sangaha, the 46 types of consciousness arise through eye door. These 46 types of consciousness take the present visible object as object. And 46 types of consciousness that arise through ear door. So they take present sound as object. And 46 types of consciousness that arise through nose door take present smell as object. And again, 46 types of consciousness that arise through tongue door take present taste as object. And 46 types of consciousness that arise through body door take present touch as object. Now, touch means the combination of earth element, fire element, and air element. So three primary elements together is called touch or tangible object. Now we come to the mind door, types of consciousness that arise through mind door. So they are altogether 67 according to the chart. The object of these mind door consciousnesses or types of consciousness that arise through mind door are not just a visible object or sound, but all 6 kinds of objects. Yesterday we learned that there are 6 kinds of objects: visible object, sound, smell, taste, touch, and Dhamma object. And then we learned that Dhamma objects are of 6 kinds. So to go back to the handout, the 5 sensitivities, subtle matter, Chaitas, Cetasikas, Nibbana, and Paññatti are called Dhamma object. Now the object of the types of consciousness that arise through mind door, the types of consciousness are 67. So the object of these are all 6 kinds of objects. And they are sometimes present, sometimes past, and sometimes future, and also sometimes independent of time, when they take concepts as object and when they take Nibbana as objects. So concept and Nibbana are said to be timeless or independent of time, because we cannot say Nibbana is past or present or future. And the same with the concepts, we cannot say the concepts are present, past or future. Nibbana is not present or past or future because Nibbana has no arising, and so it has no disappearing. And concept is said to be independent of time because it has no real intrinsic nature. So actually, the object of the 67 types of consciousness that arise through mind door is all 6 kinds of objects, and also belonging to all 3 times, present, past and future, and also those that are out of time or that are independent of time. Now we come to the last one, Dwara Vimutta, or door free. So there are 19 types of consciousness that are door free. That means they do not arise through the doors. Now there are 6 doors, but they do not arise any of the doors. Actually, they are themselves doors. So there are 19 of them, and these 19 are those that have the function of relinking, life continuum, and death. So we relate the different sections together. So these 19 types of consciousness functions as relinking, life continuum, and death. And the object of these 19 types of consciousness are said to be kamma, or kamma nimitta, or gati nimitta. You will find the explanation of this in the manual. So their object is kamma, or kamma nimitta, or gati nimitta. You'll find the explanation on page 138 of the manual. The object of the door-freed consciousness in any given existence is generally identical with the object of the last cognitive process in the immediately preceding existence. When a person is on the verge of death, in the last phase of active consciousness, some object will present itself to the cognitive process, determined by previous karma and present circumstances. This object can be one of 3 kinds. In order to understand this fully, you need to understand the thought process of death and rebirth. So that process will be taught at the end of this 5th chapter. Now, when a person is about to die, it is said that to his mind, karma or karma nimitta or gati nimitta is presented. That means when a person is approaching death, the karma he did in the past may come back to his mind, and he will experience that karma as though he were doing it again. And that karma is the past karma he did in the past. Now in this manual it is said it can be a karma, a good or evil deed performed earlier during the same lifetime. Actually, not the same lifetime. During the past time. That means it can be of past lives as well as of some karma he did in this life. So even the karma he did in his past lives can become evident to him when he is approaching death. So that is called karma, which is the object of these 19 types of consciousness that are door-free and that have the function of relinking, life continuum, and death. Now in this case karma, when that karma is presented to the mind of a dying person, his death proximate moments take that karma as object. and then he dies and is reborn in another life. So reborn in another life means a relinking consciousness arises in the new life. And that relinking consciousness takes the object of the last moments in the previous life. So that is why it is said here, identical with the object of the last cognitive process in the immediately preceding existence. Again, when a person is about to die, the karma will become evident to his mind. And this karma will be the object of his death-proximate thought moments. And he dies from that existence and is reborn in another existence. So when he is reborn, one of these 19 types of consciousness arises in that new life. And that consciousness is called relinking consciousness. That relinking consciousness takes the object of the death-proximate thought moments in the previous life, immediately preceding existence. So that is called karma. It may be a good karma or it may be a bad karma. It may be kusala karma or akusala karma or wholesome karma or unwholesome karma. This is one kind of object that is taken by these types of consciousness that are called door-free. Immediately after the disappearance of relinking consciousness, the same type of consciousness is produced, and that type of consciousness is called bhavanga, or constituent of life or cause of life. And that bhavanga arises many times. And that bhavanga also takes the object of the relinking consciousness. So if relinking consciousness takes the past karma as object, then the life continuum consciousness also takes that karma as object. And it will go on through life, and then he will come to the end of one life. So at the end of the life there arises the same type of consciousness, but this time it has a function of passing away or dying. And that consciousness takes the same object that is taken by the relinking consciousness and life continuum consciousnesses through the life. And the karma that becomes evident at that moment is the one that will produce rebirth. So there is rebirth, and that rebirth takes the object of the death-proximate thought moments in the immediately preceding existence. Now there is another kind of object called karma nimitta, or sign of karma. That means if karma does not become evident to that person, the dying person, then a sign of karma may come to his mind. And a sign of karma means an object or image associated with a good or evil deed that is about to determine rebirth, or an instrument used to perform it. So the sign of karma is associated with karma. When a person performs that karma, he may use something. For example, if the karma is of dana, then he may see a monk, or he may see the robes, and these are called karma nimitta, or sign of karma. For example, a devout person may see the image of a monk or temple. A physician may see the image of patients. A butcher may hear the groans of slaughtered cattle, or see an image of a butcher knife. So the things that are instrumental in performing that karma will appear to his mind, or to the mind of a dying being. So those objects which are presented to him are called sign of karma. So sign of karma means things that are associated with the performance of that karma. And since that karma can be good or evil, the signs of that karma are also good or evil. So the image of a monk or a temple or the Buddha image are good signs of karma, and the groans of the slaughtered cattle or butcher knife are the evil signs of karma. So if karma does not appear to his mind, then the sign of karma will appear to his mind. Now the third kind of object that presents itself to the mind of a dying being is called sign of destiny, or sign of destination. That means, destination means the next existence. So the sign of next existence, that is a symbol of the realm into which the dying person is about to be reborn. So he may see the karma, or he may see the sign of karma, or he may see the sign of destination. So that also, the destination may be a good destination or bad destination. The four woeful states are bad destination, and the realms of human beings and celestial beings are a good sign of destination. So for example, a person heading for a heavenly rebirth may see celestial mansions. He may see in his mind the celestial mansions or celestial nymphs. And a person heading for an animal rebirth may see forests or fields. And a person heading for a rebirth in hell may see hellfires, or wardens of hell, or dogs running after him, and so on. So these appear to the mind of a dying person or dying being. So it is taught in Abhidhamma that one of these objects are presented to the mind of a dying being. Then, when he approaches death, this object becomes the object of his thought moments. And then there are last thought moments that are called, again, javanas. And it is said that javanas run for only 5 times, not 7 times as usual, because at that time his body is very weak. So after 5 moments of javana, they are called death proximate javana. After 5 moments of death proximate javana, death may take place. Or there may be 2 registering moments, and then death may take place. Or there may be the life continuum moments, 1 or 2 moments, and then death takes place. And immediately after death, there is rebirth. So it is taught in Abhidhamma that there is no interim realm or interim existence between death in one life and rebirth in another. A being is immediately reborn after death. A being may be reborn thousands of miles away, but immediately after death, rebirth will arise. So, according to the teachings of Abhidhamma, there is no interim period between death in one life and rebirth in another life. But most of us think or believe that there's a period of 7 days or 49 days before a dead person gets into another life. Sometimes a dead person may be reborn as a ghost, and then again he may be reborn as a human being. Now, that the existence as a ghost is one life for him. It is not an interim period. It is one life. So, according to Abhidhamma, there is no interim period between death in one life and rebirth in another. So, rebirth immediately follows death, even though a person may be reborn thousands of miles away, or even a person may be reborn as a celestial being in the realms of devas. So, with regard to this sign of destiny, or even sign of karma, we can do something to help people, say, who are nearing or approaching death. We can create some conditions for that person, say, to remember the Buddha, or to remember the Dhamma, or to remember his good karma he did in the past. We may remind him of his good deeds he did in the past. Or we may do some meritorious deed at that time and let him know about it and rejoice at it. So in this way we can help the dying people. Now there is a story in our commentaries that there was a hunter, and he has been a hunter for all his life. He had a son who was an arahant. So when he was old, the son arahant got him to ordain, and so he became a monk. But when he was about to die, the sign of destinies appeared to his mind, and he was saying, "Oh son, please help me, the dogs are running after me," and so on. So when the son who was an arahant heard these groans, he knew that these are the signs of hell, and so his father was about to be reborn in hell. So he had his pupils, the novices, collect flowers, and then he brought the old monk, the dying monk, to a shrine, to a chaitya, and then spread the flowers on the terrace of the stupa, and then telling his father that this is his dana to the Buddha, and so he should rejoice at that dana. So the mind of the dying father, the monk, was changed. Now he had the shrine in his mind, and he was offering flowers to the shrine. So this is a wholesome act, and so immediately the signs of destiny changed. Now he was seeing celestial names. So now he was saying, "Son, your mother-in-laws are coming." So when the arahant heard this, he knew that his father was about to be reborn as a celestial being, and so he died and he was reborn there. That is how people can help those who are approaching death. So it is very important that we do not do anything to disturb their minds at that very critical moment. So we must try as much as we can to create favorable conditions for his mind to get pacified and to remember the Buddha, or to remember his good karma he did in the past. So this is how we can help dying people according to the teachings of Abhidhamma. So one of these three kinds of objects always appear to the mind of a dying being, and they are 1. Karma, and 2. Sign of karma, and 3. Sign of destination. So one of these three always appear to the mind of a dying being by the force of that karma he did in the past, by the force of that karma which is about to give results. So in one life, the object of relinking consciousness, life continuum consciousness, and death consciousness is identical. If rebirth consciousness takes karma as object, then for the whole of the life continuum consciousnesses also take karma as object, and then at the end death consciousness also takes that karma as object. So in one life these three types of consciousness take the same identical object. If the object is sign of karma, then the sign of karma of relinking, then that sign of karma will be the object of the life continuum thought moments and death moment. If it is sign of destiny also, the life continuum will take the sign of destiny, that particular sign of destiny, and the death consciousness also takes that particular sign of destiny. So these are the three types of objects that 19 types of consciousness that have the function of relinking, life continuum, and death take. Now, this is the normal circumstance. But there are beings high in the Brahma world who had only the physical body, and they have no mind or mental activity. Let us call them mindless beings. So mindless beings are Brahmas. They are reborn in that realm as a result of the jhanas they obtained before death. Now there are people who think that because we have the mind, we know things and we suffer. If we do not have minds, we will not suffer. So what if we are just a physical body and have no mind at all? So they develop that disgust for mind, and they are the opposite of those who practice meditation to reach arupa vachara jhanas. And so as a result of their meditation, when they died, they are reborn as mindless beings. Since there is no mind, there can be no relinking consciousness, life continuum consciousness, or death proximate consciousness. They will be there for 500 world cycles, a long, long time. So they will be there like statues. And then after 500 world cycles, they will die from that existence and will be reborn as devas or human beings. So, when they are reborn as devas or human beings, then there arises the relinking consciousness. But there was no mental activity in the immediately previous existence. So in that case, the relinking consciousness, when they are reborn as a human being, cannot take the object that has been taken by the death proximate consciousness in the immediate past life. So in their case, by the power of karma they did in the past, another kind of object will present itself to their minds. So not those taken by death proximate javanas in the immediately preceding existence. So, but for most beings, the relinking consciousness takes the object that has been taken by the death proximate javanas or near-death thoughts of a person who was dying. Now, there is one thing important when we talk about death and rebirth. Now, we say that rebirth immediately follows death. Many people think that rebirth is the result of death. Now, there is death and there is rebirth. So, death brings about rebirth or something like that, they would say. But that is not true. Because death consciousness is a resultant consciousness, vipaka consciousness. So death consciousness cannot produce anything because it is not karma. It is the result of karma. Since it is the resultant consciousness, it cannot produce anything. But the relinking consciousness that arises immediately after it is the result of some karma he did in the past, in that life or in previous lives. So this we must understand clearly. So sometimes people say death conditions rebirth. So what do you think of that? Death conditions rebirth. In one sense, it is true. Because there are many kinds of conditions, 24 kinds of conditions taught in the 7th book of Abhidhamma. Now, one of these 24 conditions is called proximate condition. And that means simply giving place to another consciousness. That means death consciousness disappears so that rebirth consciousness can arise. If death consciousness does not disappear, then rebirth consciousness cannot arise. So in this case, death consciousness ceases so that the patisandhi or relinking consciousness can arise. So in that sense, the rebirth is conditioned by death. But this is just like giving place to another person. So I vacate this chair so that you can sit in it, something like that. So that is also called a causal relationship in Abhidhamma, in the 7th book of Abhidhamma. In Pali it is called Anantara Paccaya. So death is that proximate cause or proximate condition for rebirth. But we are not to understand by that expression that rebirth is caused by death. As I explained, death consciousness is a resultant consciousness, and so it cannot give any results. But the rebirth consciousness is also a result. This rebirth consciousness is the result of some karma in the past, and not the result of death consciousness. So death consciousness simply disappears so that relinking consciousness can arise. So in that sense only we can say that death consciousness conditions rebirth consciousness, or rebirth consciousness is conditioned by death. So death is one thing and rebirth is another, and with regard to the objects also, they take different objects. Death in, let us say, previous life takes the object of the relinking in that previous life. But rebirth in the next existence takes the object of the death proximate moments, not the death moment itself, but those moments that precede death. So, although the kind of object can be the same, that means karma or karma nimitta or gati nimitta, karma or sign of karma or sign of destiny, they are different. So, we must here definitely understand that death is not the cause of rebirth. It can be a condition for rebirth only when we understand it to mean that proximity condition or just giving place to another consciousness to arise. Okay, now these 19 types of consciousness arise without the help of doors, or they do not arise through doors, and they have the function of the relinking, life continuum, and death, and they take one of the three kinds of objects, and they are karma, sign of karma, and sign of destination. Next, we will go to the section on bases. This chart, Vattu Sangaha. Now we have studied the consciousness and mental factors, and also we know that consciousness and mental factors take objects, and the objects they take may be another consciousness and mental factors, and also 28 material properties and concepts and nibbana. But in order for a consciousness to arise, we need some kind of base. That means when it arises in beings like human beings, in beings that have physical body. So, in the realms where beings are with physical body, consciousness and also mental factors need something, say, to depend on for their arising. And that something that they depend for their arising is called Vattu in Pali. And it is usually translated as base. So a base is a physical support for the occurrence of consciousness. When we say consciousness, we also mean mental factors. And there are 6 bases taught in Abhidhamma, and they are Chakku Vatu, eye base. Sota Vatu, ear base. Ghana Vatu, nose base. Jihva Vatu, tongue base. And Kaya Vatu, body base. And eye base means eye sensitivity, sensitive parts in the eye. And ear base means sensitive material particles in the ear and so on. And body base means sensitive parts in the whole of the body. Only when there are sensitive particles in the eye can seeing consciousness arise. So in order for seeing consciousness arise, this base is required. Now you see, these 5 bases correspond to the 5 doors. Eye door means eye sensitivity, eye base means eye sensitivity. So they correspond to the 5 doors. But there is a difference. Now, there are 46 types of consciousness that arise through eye door. But not all these 46 types of consciousness depend on eye base. Now, when you see something, then there is a thought process. In that thought process, we can find 46 types of consciousness. All of these 46 types of consciousness arise through eye door. But not all of them depend on eye base for their arising. Only one of them, or let's say 2 of them, the seeing consciousness. Only seeing consciousness depend on eye base. The other consciousness depend on the heart base. It will come later. So this is a difference. Although they are the same, although eye base and eye door are the sensitive material properties in the eye, they have a different role to play in the origination of consciousness. So consciousness arises through doors, and consciousness arises depending on the bases. Again, 46 types of consciousness arise through eye door. But not all of them depend on eye base for their arising. Only the seeing consciousness depend on eye base. But the other types of consciousness depend on the heart base for their arising. So there are now five vatus or 5 bases. Now the 6th base is called Hadaya Vatu. Hadaya means heart. So heart base. Now with this heart base, there is something to say. According to the Pali commentators, the heart serves as the physical support for all chetas other than the 2 sets of 5-fold sense consciousness, which take their respective sensitivities as their bases. In the canonical Abhidhamma, the heart base is not expressly mentioned. Now, I always said that there are 28 types of material properties, right? 28 rupa. Now, the first book of Abhidhamma is the book where all chetas, cetasikas and rupas are mentioned. We find 89 or 121 types of consciousness in that first book. We find 52 Chaitasikas in that book. And we find only 27 material properties mentioned in that book. One is missing. But our teachers, the commentators, said that there is a material property called Hadaya Vatu or heart base. Although it is not mentioned in the first book of Abhidhamma, they said it is mentioned in the seventh book of Abhidhamma. But when we read the seventh book of Abhidhamma, we do not find that. Buddha did not expressly mention the word Hadaya there. He just said, depending on a certain material property, the mind element and mind consciousness element arise, something like that. So Buddha did not expressly use the word Hadaya for that material property. He said depending on a certain type of matter, consciousness arises and so on. And that certain type of matter is interpreted to mean Hadaya or heart by our ancient teachers. So following our ancient teachers, we say there are 28 types of material properties. And among them this heart. And you know the heart. Actually it is not the heart itself, but the cavity in the heart, and there is blood in the heart, and so that is what we call Hadaya Vatu, heart base. And many types of consciousness, Abhidhamma teaches, depend on that heart base. Now, seeing consciousness depend on eye base, hearing consciousness depend on ear base, and so on. Touching consciousness depend on body base, and all other types of consciousness, almost all other, depend on heart base. And some depend on heart base always, and some depend on it sometimes only. So we have two groups of consciousness, so that depend on heart base always, and that depend on heart base sometimes only. And also there are types of consciousness that depend on no base at all. Now you know the Brahmas that are without physical body. They have only consciousness and mental factors. For these Brahmas, they don't need a physical base, or they don't have a physical base for the consciousness to arise. So some material, types of consciousness that arise only in the realms of immaterial existence. They do not need any base, so they do not depend on any base. They always are free from base. Like door-free types of consciousness, we may call them Vatu-free types of consciousness. So we will find out what these types of consciousness are. Now, before we find out what consciousness depend on what to obey, we must understand the classification of Chetas in seven categories. So they are given on the sheet. Now there are 89 or 121 types of consciousness, and they are divided into 7 groups. Now you see the names. 1, Chakku Vijnana Dhatu, eye consciousness element. Now when we hear the word element, we think that it is only material. Only material things are called element. But in Abhidhamma, mental states are also called element. So here consciousness is called an element. So the first element is Chakku Vijnana Dhatu. Chakku means eye and Vijnana means consciousness. So eye consciousness element. An eye consciousness element means 2 eye consciousnesses. And number 2 is Sota Vijnana Dhatu, ear consciousness element. Ear consciousness element means 2 ear consciousnesses or hearing consciousnesses. And then number 3 is Ghana Vijnana Dhatu, nose consciousness element. And nose consciousness element means Ghana Vijnana 2, nose, two types of nose consciousness. Number 4, Jihva Vijnana Dhatu, tongue consciousness element. There are 2 tongue consciousnesses. And then Kaya, number 5, Kaya Vijnana Dhatu, body consciousness element. And there are 2 body consciousnesses. Now number 6, Mano Dhatu. We met Mano Dhatu yesterday. Okay. So Mano Dhatu is the name, mind element. Mano Dhatu is the name of 3 types of consciousness. Sampatichana 2 and Panchadwara Vajana 1. The receiving, 2 receiving consciousnesses and 1 5 sense door adverting. So these 3 types of consciousness are collectively called Mano Dhatu or mind element. And the rest, the remaining 76 Chetas are called, number 7, Mano Vijnana Dhatu, mind consciousness element. So we divide the 89 types of consciousness into 7 elements, 7 consciousness elements. Again, they are eye consciousness element, ear consciousness element, nose consciousness element, tongue consciousness element, body consciousness element, mind element, and mind consciousness element. And also these six bases are found in the sense world. All of these 6 bases are found in the world of senses. That means in the world of human beings and lower celestial beings called devas, and also in the world of woeful states. In these existences, in these realms, all 6 vatus can be found. So let us see a human being. So a human being as the eye, the ear, the tongue, the nose, and the body. So these 5 bases are found in a human being. And then human being has the mind or consciousness, and so this consciousness, other types of consciousness depend on the heart base. So we can find a heart base in human beings also. So all these 6 bases are found in the world of senses or in the Kama Vajra world. But in the Rupa Vajra world, in the world of Brahmas with body, 3 are missing. And those 3 are nose base, tongue base, and body base. So these 3 are missing in the Brahmas, the material Brahmas. Now it is explained in the commentaries that although these 3 bases are missing in the Brahmas, they still have nose, tongue, and body. So what is missing is the sensitive parts in the nose and the tongue and in the body. So they may look like human beings with nose, tongue, and body, but they have no sense of smell, no sense of taste, and no sense of touch. Now these 3 are missing for them because they do not think they are necessary. They even find fault with these. They have no noble purpose, say, to perform the nose and so on. So they develop disgust for these 3 bases, and they practice meditation, and so as a result of this meditation, when they are reborn as Brahmas, then these 3 that they don't like are missing in their bodies. So they may look like human beings, but they have no sense of smell, taste, and touch. In the world of formless beings, Arupa Vajra Loka, there is no base at all, because you see bases are all material properties. Since there are no material properties in the Arupa Vajra Brahmas or immaterial Brahmas, so then none of and these 6 can be found in the world of immaterial beings. So we human beings have 6 bases, but the Rupa Brahmas have only 3 bases: eye, ear, and heart base. Now eye base, they think it is useful because we can see the Buddha. And ear base is also useful because we can hear the Dhamma. And heart base is for the other types of consciousness to depend on. So they do not develop disgust for these 3 types of material properties or 3 types of bases. So when they are reborn with only 3 bases and not the other 3, nose, tongue, and body. Now let us find out the consciousness, types of consciousness that depend on these bases. Now, Lobha Mula Cheta, 8 Lobha Mula Chetas, 8 types of consciousness rooted in Lobha. They depend on Hadaya Vatu S. S means sometimes. So they depend on Haryavotu sometimes only, not always. Now when they arise in human beings and Rupa Brahmas, they depend on heart base. But when they arise in the minds of the formless beings, they do not depend on heart base. So they depend on heart base sometimes only. Now the next, dosa mula. Two types of consciousness accompanied by ill will. They depend on heart base always. That is because they do not arise in the minds of Arupa Vajra Brahmas. So they are said to depend on heart base always. And then moha mula too, rooted in moha. They depend on heart base sometimes only. So among the 12 akusala consciousness, 10 depend on heart base sometimes only, and 2 depend on heart base always. Then seeing consciousness or eye consciousness. Two eye consciousnesses depend on eye base. 2 ear consciousnesses depend on ear base, and 2 nose consciousnesses depend on nose base. 2 tongue consciousnesses depend on tongue base, and 2 body consciousnesses depend on body base. Now we come to manodhatu. So manodhatu means sampatichana and panchadvara vajana. So manodhatu means the receiving consciousness and 5 sense door adverting. So these 3 always depend on heart base, because they do not arise in the minds of Arupa Vajra Brahmas. And then Santirana, investigation 3. Investigation 3 depend on heart base always. And then Manodvara Vajana. 1 Manodvara Vajana, mind door adverting. Mind door adverting depend on heart base sometimes only. So when it arises in the Arupa Vajra Brahmas, it does not depend on heart base. So it depends on heart base sometimes only. And then Hasitupara, smile producing consciousness. Smile producing consciousness depend on heart base always, because they do not arise in Arupa Vajra Brahmas. In order to smile, you need to have a body. But if you have no body, there can be no smile. So smiling consciousness or smile producing consciousness depends on heart base always. Okay, let's have a break.